Welcome to another video in the series about the C29 Clang compiler. This is the first of two videos which describe how to migrate code from the C28 compiler to the C29 compiler. My name is George Mock and I'm your guide. I start by asking you to find a page on the internet. This video is being recorded in August of 2025, so obviously that's how things work right now. And I do expect them to work in a very similar way for a long time. Nonetheless, the farther out in time you are from August 2025, the more likely it is things will be a bit different. So keep that in mind. So start by doing an internet search on this phrase right here, F28-F29 Software Migration Guide. And that'll take you to a page similar to what I'm showing in this screenshot. And then I want you to click on Migration Flow. And that's really where I'm looking to get you to go see is the Migration Flow page. On the Migration Flow page, just before step 5, you see this. Okay, and it talks about C28, C29, CPU migration, and gives you a little bit of detail about that. The point I want to make here is this video exclusively focuses on this one part of the overall migration flow. So this is like one part of step 4 is what this video is about. That means there's 4.5 other steps of very important stuff that are involved in migrating from C28 to C29. Things like sysconfig and which SDK do you use and changing your linker command file and so on. And I touch on the linker command file part in this video, but all the rest of it I don't discuss at all. And those are important steps. So I want to make sure that you know that those steps need to be completed and they are not covered in this video. Here is the agenda for the rest of this video, part 1, and for all of part 2. I will introduce a C28X project in Code Composer Studio version 20.2.0 and then automatically migrate it from C28X to C29X. Then in part 2, I'll explain C29 Clang Tidy, what that is and how it's helpful. We'll explore the code differences. I'll explain differences in the linker command file and how that worked. And then we'll build it for C29X and show that all of these steps actually worked in a fairly straightforward manner. Welcome to Code Composer Studio version 20.2.0. I've loaded into it a project I will use to demonstrate migrating from C28X to C29X. The code and everything that you see in the project is not typical of what is seen in the field in C28X projects today. Instead, it is written to demonstrate particular migration issues. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Notice it builds clean, so for the moment we can pretend that it is a normal C28X project, even though that isn't quite the case. Okay, I started with a C2000ware example project, and then I took all the source files out and changed it to the source files that I'll be showing you here. Although I did keep the linker command file, and I'll show that here in a minute. The first file I want to show is called intrinsicmac.c. It's already up. It's got a single function named intrinsicmac. It's computing a multiply accumulate. Most of the work is done by this dmac intrinsic, which is specific to C28X, which raises the question, hey, how do you migrate this to C29X? And we will get into that. The next file to take a quick look at is main.c. Again, very not typical of what main.c looks like in most C28X projects. We've got some two arrays. One's in flash 1, one is in flash 2. The data section pragma is used to arrange for these arrays to go into a section named FSN1. FSN stands for flash section name. So FSN1, FSN2, that's where these two arrays are, in flash 1 and in flash 2. And then going down a little bit, there are two more arrays. These are in RAM, so they're called in RAM 1, in RAM 2. And their section names are RSN1, or RSN is our RAM section name, and then RSN2. All right. And then here the code on lines 40 and 41 does a copy from flash to RAM for those arrays. And I do it two different ways because that'll become a point of discussion upon migration. One way is favored, the other way is not favored, and we'll get into why that is. And the copy in is related to copying the code for the intrinsic Mac function from flash to RAM. But I want to come back to this after looking at the linker command file. And then on line 43 is the call to intrinsic Mac itself to compute the multiply accumulate. One unusual thing here is that the result of that multiply accumulate is not used. Alright, so let's look at the linker command file. It started from the C2000ware project. I took that linker command file and it is mostly unmodified. I added some lines, and let's go look at those. In the sections directive, I added these lines starting on 61 through 71. So what are these lines? So remember these section names I showed you in main.c. Well, here they're getting allocated. All right, so the FSN guys are in the flash memory ranges, and the RSN guys are into RAM memory ranges. So far, so good. On line 66, the section .text : intrinsic Mac is created. It contains the code for the function intrinsic Mac. It gets two allocations, a run allocation in RAM and a load allocation in flash. And then on line 69, the table directive is used to create a copy table with a specific name called intrinsic Mac copy table. This is not the only way you might do this. It's just the way that demonstrates some migration issues that I want to get into. One of the things that happens when you use the table directive on line 69 is that an output section is created to contain the copy table itself, and the name of that output section is here on line 71. .ovly is the name of that output section, and line 71 allocates the copy table section into flash. So back to main.c, and now I can finally talk about the copy in call. So we've seen how the intrinsic Mac copy table is created in the linker command file. This copy in call will actually read, the load address and the run address and the length and so on. I'm sorry about all this. It'll perform the copy from flash to RAM for the function intrinsic Mac copy table, which must occur before you call intrinsic Mac as it occurs on line 43. So that completes the tour of the code that we'll be using for the migration demonstration project. Next on the agenda is automatically migrating the project from C28X to C29X. Before I do the migration, I want to point out that you can always pause the video, take screenshots and things like that to make a record, your own record of what I'm doing. Alright, so what I'm going to do, and there's more than one way to do this, the way I like to do it is right click, alternate click on the name of the project, choose Properties, and we will go into General, and here where it says Compiler, we're going to change the compiler to a C29X compiler. And we don't see it here yet. There's a lot of C2000 guys. Oh, here it is. TI Clang version 1.0.0.LTS. We'll choose this. Save and close. And that's what does it. And it says right here you get a notification. Notification down here on the right, migration tasks were performed and so on. Open log. And then here's a log of the things that it changed and things that you need to know about. Don't be afraid of, losing this somehow. In fact, I'll show you where it is. I'll go ahead and close it here. This file is added to the project, so project.log. Just double click that guy and it comes back. Okay? So the first thing you'll notice are the changes to the build options. These are the C2000, C28X compiler build options, and these are the corresponding C29X build options that were automatically chosen for you. These first few are pretty straightforward. For instance, no optimization is the default with the C28X compiler, and to say the same thing with the C29 compiler is -0. Okay. And so on. The include paths, that's something that's best covered in the, remember how at the beginning of the video I talked about migration flow? That's covered in there, particularly when you're changing from a C28X based SDK to a C29X based SDK. That's where all that sort of thing will get changed, and that's the best way to do that. Similarly with these predefines, command line defines, similar story. So -G becomes this with C29 Clang, and so on. Okay. The following Clang tidy checks. I will be talking about Clang tidy. All I want to mention right here is if you want to know what are the checks that were used during the automatic migration, you can come see it here in the project log. If you want to come back to this, these are the ones that were used at the time of the automatic migration. We'll be doing more with Clang tidy here in a little bit in part 2. Now the interesting thing here are all these options. These are C28X compiler options that are not automatically migrated. Okay, in this particular case, they come in two varieties. -ML through the -VCU support options. Those are all options associated with specifying exactly which variant of the C28X CPU is being used. In this particular case, these options came from the C2000ware project that I started with. Okay, this is one of the things that I got from that project that I did not change. Okay, and this is telling you that they weren't automatically migrated because it doesn't really make sense. These are variations of a C28X CPU. When you go to a C29X CPU, you need to conceptually do the same thing. You need to specify precisely which variant of the C29X CPU which variant of the C29X CPU is being used. But the best way to do that is to get it from an example project in the SDK. And the way that works is you indicate I'm using precisely this number of the device, and that gets mapped to options such as these. Let's consider the ones that I've ignored so far. These last three, diag something or other. They're all related to diagnostic settings. I want to see these diagnostics. I don't want to see others, and I want to change the level of other diagnostics. Things of that nature. That is done differently in the C29 Clang compiler because diagnostics are quite different there. I want to close this video with two references. The first one is to the homepage for the C29X and C28X compilers. This is the web address. On most browsers, you can start here. You type in ti.com/tool, and then you have to match capitalization and everything on this. C2000-CGT. CGT stands for Code Generation Tools. You can download the compilers, access the documentation, and other details like that. The second reference is to e2e.ti.com. This is for customer questions on any TI product, including C29 Clang. Compiler-related questions are answered by me. Thank you for watching this video in the series about the C29 Clang compiler.